Welcome everyone, and thank you so much. Now, let me set the context for our conversation today. India's manufacturing sector is just not only an economic engine, it is the foundation of our journey towards Viksit Bharat. Contributing around 17% to the nation's GDP, manufacturing is set to play a transformational role in India's economic future, with the government ambitiously working to raise the share to 25% in the near term. The Make in India initiative, which has completed a decade, has been pivotal in fostering and strengthening India's global manufacturing status by enhancing foreign direct investment, skill development, and updating manufacturing infrastructure. In fact, thanks to production-linked incentives, or the PLI scheme as we all know it, FDI in the manufacturing sector has surged by an impressive 76%. But India's vision now extends beyond Make in India. It is Make in India for the world. With shifting global supply chains, India has emerged as a strong alternative manufacturing hub as companies seek to diversify and reduce dependence on several nations, including China. A shift that has accelerated with Donald Trump's return as the 47th US president and his renewed focus on trade policies. The evolving landscape presents both challenges and unprecedented opportunities with this impressive growth potential. Our panel today represents three unique voices in manufacturing to discuss how India can sustainably achieve its goals and become a global manufacturing powerhouse. Let me welcome Dipali Goenka, CEO and MD, Wellspun Living Limited; Habil Khorakiwala, Founder Chairman, Wockhardt Group; Rajesh Sharma, CEO, Keynes Technology India Limited. Now, in this panel, we have three distinct sectors, but all of them very, very crucial to this dream of Viksit Bharat. Look at it this way. Every time there is a requirement, it's the private sector asked to come up, put in the capex, create the jobs, and of course, drive us to Viksit Bharat. Let me start with that thought with you, Dipali. This claim or this assertion that the road to Viksit Bharat is paved by the country's manufacturing sector. Would you agree with it?
I totally agree with that, because when we talk about, and when I talk about manufacturing, and we are talking about 1.4 billion people, and 30 to 40% of that is the youngest population in the world, definitely it is the path towards Viksit Bharat. When I talk about manufacturing and when I talk about Wellspun and home textiles, let me tell you one thing. When you talk about the white collar and tech, that is another aspect for it. But the deployment of the grassroots level will be done by manufacturing, like example, textiles. Because after agriculture, it is manufacturing and textiles that deploys the maximum people. And I think the highest, and after, I think it is one of the highest revenue earner as well for India today. So yes, manufacturing will be an integral part of what India wants a journey towards Viksit Bharat, but there's a lot more to be done there, Tamanna. And I think I leave at that right now as we speak forward.
I think it's also important to set the context of why manufacturing is so crucial. From the last 75 years plus of India's independence, we have made our name in the world as a service sector powerhouse. We're famous for the back office of the world, the call centers of the world. It's time to shift gears. And Dr. Khorakiwala, let me come to you on that point. Can we really continue to rest on the power of our service sector as AI threatens some of those industries? Why has manufacturing become so crucial? And you see policymakers shifting gears as well.
One of the aspect of our industry, pharmaceutical and manufacturing, is ours is a very science and technology driven industry. So when you talk of our industry, manufacturing along with innovation is a very integral part of our industry, and our India's success of supplying medicine to US and other parts of the world is a result of a technology input over the years. And I believe that the health sector and medicine and drugs are undergoing transformational change over the years, And the future is very unlikely to be the same like the past. And there is going to be major technology shift from chemical-based entities, which is today a bedrock of our pharmaceutical product, to moving towards the biological-based drugs. So new drugs which are recently approved in the last 5-7 years, 70% of them are of biological origin. So I think this is the area where already India has a base, but I think we have to build up the kind of strength we have done in chemistry, in biologics in the years to come to be successful. The other important aspect is that in our industry, if you have to make a mark in the world, two things are required. One is ours is a intellectually driven industry more than the people driven industry. So you need scientists, you need, and the IT certainly helps. AI and IT will certainly help the future of our industry. Therefore, what is important that we need to establish a good base where there is only a little beginning has been taken place, is finding new drugs. And therefore, research and innovation will be very important if India has to be recognized as a worthwhile pharmaceutical company other than supplying medicine.
So, Sir's super hit Zenic is something that everyone's talking about, new innovations coming in from across the board.
Oh yeah, we have invested for last 25 years to finding new antibiotics. And today I can, without exaggeration, can say that we are in antibiotic space on drug discovery. Probably we are the most successful drug discovery company anywhere in the world.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Remember, we are going through a phase of antibiotics that are getting more and more resistant. So to put in context, an innovation coming out from India, from an Indian company, of an antibiotic which is at the forefront becomes very crucial. The other aspect of innovation, and Mr. Rajesh, the industry that you are in is so exciting. What's also exciting to hear from you is what happens when there is government and policy push. So, for example, the PLI scheme, and how much of it has ensured that in your space, you can charge ahead and compete with the rest of the world?
So certainly, Tamanna, first thing I'd like to say, actually instead of Viksit Bharat, we should call it Reviksit Bharat.
Reviksit Bharat.
Reviksit Bharat, because if you read the history of India, in the AD 1 to 1000, India had almost 33% of the world's GDP share. And we are talking in 2047 to reach that level again. So if you're talking of that, and that's where something where the government is working towards, it's very important for the success of scheme like this where the industry leaders do come together. In addition to that, the government policy makers have to join hands together, very strongly supported by the financial markets. Because without financial institutions coming forward, a collaboration between these three segments is extremely critical for manufacturing to really become large in the country. Coming to your specific questions, certainly PLI has given a great push to the Indian manufacturing. That was one of the areas, where when China was growing into the manufacturing side, the support from the government was very, very critical. Now, if you look at the infrastructure development, where the ports, the highways, the supply chain, etc., the logistics is improving in terms of integrated supply chain, which is very, very crucial to the whole thing. And then the talent pool, which is very critical. Now, Dipali already talked about the age of, the average age of the people in India, with, average being between late 20s and early 30s. That workable age of employees that are going to be in India is very, very important for manufacturing segment. So the PLIs have certainly given a great push to the manufacturing in India, specifically in the scheme one of PLI, whether it was IT, whether it was telecom, has been a great opportunity for companies like Keynes and the other electronics manufacturing company to gain the advantage of that and make better offerings at competitive price to its customers.
So the EMS story is well known from a manufacturing perspective, from a stock market perspective, and we'll go around again to the next point, and I'll come to you, Rajesh, on this. When you hear about reciprocal tariffs from the American perspective, what does it mean for you, considering your company is now also foraying into semiconductors?
See, of course, the importance of semiconductor was very much realized during the pandemic time.
Yes.
When the whole world was completely shifting to the technology, schools working from home, the jobs happening from home, the need for your display fabs, your mobile phones, your tablets, your laptops, everything was in short supply. And it's not just India, the countries around the world focused on their semiconductor policy. It's not just that the India alone set up an India semiconductor mission. The many countries who actually established their specific semiconductor missions, making a push for the semiconductor policy of their country so that they can support the increasing demand for the electronics and technology for the country. So there could certainly be tariff pushes that will come up from the US and other countries. But I think more than reciprocal, the government has to work towards the bilateral tariff system with the countries, and that because it's not that everything either India could manufacture or China can manufacture or any other country can manufacture. It is, it's a global village today. We all talk about global village. Unless we all work together with bilateral tariffs, bilateral systems, that will be very, very important for the success of manufacturing.
Which is why the next few weeks become so crucial from the perspective of the manufacturing sector in India and the world. Dr. Khorakiwala, when you hear about reciprocal tariffs, what is your response? Are you worried or are you not?
See, our industry, pharmaceutical, basically to make a change in formulation, for example, takes roughly 3 to 5 years. So from that context, there is, unlike steel or cement, you can switch suppliers at a day's notice. You can't do this in our industry. So the view I have is short term. Any tariff coming on Indian goods will be passed on to American consumers and Indian companies will not be affected.
Okay.
But long term, one doesn't know what happens after 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. No, let me repeat that. This is interesting. Any tariffs that are imposed on Indian companies will impact American consumers, not Indian companies, because we'll just pass it on.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is an interesting perspective. I suppose, Dipali ji, the concern is that does it make us less competitive? Because if it's reciprocal tariffs, then from that perspective, we are seeming higher.
So first of all, I think let's keep the tariffs aside, but let's talk about India in a position for me as a textile hub or the manufacturing hub. I think the world needs India, and as we're speaking about Viksit Bharat, I think India has been put on the world map and is being spoken about in all the boardrooms across the globe of all the countries for being an integral part of that supply chain. So for when we talk about America, I think, and when I talk about Wellspun as a company, as an organization, I mean, the complete integrated supply chain, one of the biggest manufacturing factories or company this side of the world, apart from China, creating the entire supply chain and, the serviceability for all the retailers globally and having more than 42 patents in home textile.
Wow.
I think I can just tell you one thing, that while we talk about the tariffs, I think, first of all, I think it's going to be more bilateral, because I think when we're talking about two countries, they've already come to a conversation where they're going to be talking about growth in both the countries, and it's going to be beneficial to both the countries. So I think for me, I am more positive about it. To Mr. Khorakiwala, when he talked about it'll be passed on to the consumer, for us in home textiles, it is a very small part of that wallet share where, we are that towel or a sheet or that rug that they use, and it is very, very sensitive.
Yeah, it's
so I think
yeah.
it will be something that we will have to work mutually. But however, coming to Tamanna, coming to the tariffs, I think for India and US, both of them need each other. And I think the bilateral trade will be something that will be where we will be talking about more than anything else.
You want to come?
I want to add a point here.
Yes, of course.
If you look on the semiconductor side, the US has predominantly and has a very large share of the design-led semiconductor. The manufacturing focus was always on the Far East Asia, China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and countries like that. And then the supply chain was completely dependent on China and Taiwan. So with that as the scene, so what we are looking at is shifting manufacturing into India. And if you look at the design workforce, almost 20% of the design workforce in semiconductor and electronic space is Indians, whether based out of India or based outside of India.
They might as well do it here.
Yeah, so that's what would happen. So there's a lot of shift happening on design-led manufacturing and also on the manufacturing per se in the country.
I just would like to add, as far as pharmaceutical industry is concerned, we are one of the largest supplier of medicine worldwide.
Yes.
Our industry is about number 3 in terms of export earning today, and we supply 40% of medicine the American consumers uses.
Wow.
60% of vaccine worldwide it is supplied, and that is same happened in COVID-19. So it's a very, very significant player. We are already there. And therefore, from that point of view, if we keep up with technology and science, as we have done in the past, we can always aspire for more.
You know, we should acknowledge the role of Indian pharmaceutical companies in supplying affordable medicines across the world to nations and people who have not been able to afford them. So that is a huge contribution of the Indian pharmaceutical industry, and that is something that we should acknowledge. But Dipali ji, since we were talking, and this is something Rajesh brought up, about being an alternative to China. So let's address the dragon in the room. We keep talking about India +1 or India versus China as an alternative to China. How do you see us getting there? In your industry, are we able to capitalize on what we are seeing in neighboring Bangladesh, which has been a textile hub and is undergoing some issues right now?
So, we always speak about China +1 for India, but I think the important aspect, let me point out here, is that, we are talking about the youth and the skilling here. There's a lot more to be done here. The government has leveraged, government has given us the opportunity for Samarth, even in the kind of budget when you're talking about government is talking about upskilling, skilling, the whole Gati Shakti being the logistics, because that's an integral part of the entire supply chain, the PLI, as we spoke about. There's something that we really need to do is about the culture in this country and the speed to market. Because it's not just about the investments in manufacturing, it's the investments in that, the manpower and the people. And I think there's something that we need to really look at as if we compare ourselves to China. There's lots that we've done, but there's still lots more to be done. And for us at Welspun, we deploy around 25,000 people. And if we are talking, and I think as corporates, and as we had spoken earlier, that it comes on to the privatized sectors to look at capex, look at how we are, taking on that, burden or an opportunity to take that forward. I think at Welspun, we actually are looking at skilling more people, looking at investing in technology, Industry 4.0, AI, and other investments. So while we talk about China, I think we ourselves are our own brand ambassadors. And I think at Welspun, we believe in that when we take that baton forward. And whether it is the supply chain analytics sitting in America, or the warehousing doing the vendor-managed inventories, or working on the patents, or different kind of innovations. I think that's going to be a very important aspect. Now, taking on the opportunity of investing in capex, investing in whether we need to make our fashion towels here, or fashion bedding, or it could be the utility bedding, setting up even the pillow plant in America. I think there are interesting things that I think as corporates we'll also have to take on. So while the government will leverage, will give us some more opportunities, but I think it is on us. How do we take that forward?
No, well said. Very well said in terms of what the role is of the private sector. But let me just come to you again on the point you made of what we need to learn in terms of quick turnaround. And if I can ask you to elaborate on that, because it's not as if there is no appetite for Indian goods. It's about whether we can deliver in the time and speed that is required.
So again, I think we all will agree here on the panel as well. I think the critical thing is about technology and digitization. And again, I'll just give a simple example of what we do. I have warehouses in America. I mean, for certain retailers, I do vendor managed inventories. That's like literally writing the POs for them, actually analyzing what the consumer is wanting, and actually integrating the entire supply chain together. So, you know, for all of us sitting here in this room, the key thing is that now it is about how you are going to contribute towards the Viksit Bharat. It's not just going to be the government working with you, but it's also going to be how you are going to be working towards that as well.
Let me come to you, Rajesh, on the point of should India be looking at, or should Indian industry be looking at itself as an alternative to China, competing with China? And is this moment ripe for it? How should we position ourselves in a global scale?
You see, in my opinion, we should stop looking ourselves as an alternative to China. We have our own strengths. We have our own market in India and outside of India. And that's what Indian Inc. should be focusing on, delivering with your capabilities. See, one of the advantages or how China positioned themselves was on scalability. If I look at electronics industry or semiconductor industry, if we talk of the factories in China and Taiwan and these places, they run into square kilometers. We talk about acres. If we have a 500-acre factory, we think it's like really big. And there we talk of, factories of Foxconn, which runs into square kilometers.
Right.
They talk of hiring 4 to 5 lakh people in one single factory.
Wow.
And we are talking of employment of a few thousand or maybe a few 100,000, that's it. So that is a huge opportunity. The scalability can be delivered.
No, so how do we deliver that scalability? How do we get there? Because this is, I think, the nub of the entire conversation. Everyone's clear we are getting to Viksit Bharat. Everyone's clear manufacturing is the driver. Now the question is about how.
See, the OEMs around the world are looking at India, so they are looking at Indian manufactured goods. Ever since the pandemic was over, the way we have been receiving the inquiries from some of the largest OEM brands around the world in various segments. When we talk about electronics, it's not just the white goods or the mobile phones or laptops, etc. We talk about automobile industry completely. We talk about electric vehicles. We talk about medical devices. We talk about railways. We talk about aerospace. We talk about defense. We talk about outer space.
Wow.
So these are 9 or 10 industries which Keynes alone caters to in the electronic space. So it's every segment that is open and available for you to explore.
Let me just add on here, being the thought leader. I think we just can't be followers, and we can't just be, doing just the manufacturing, but I think leading. And I think that's going to be a very key thing for us to work on, now, whether it's textiles or, the semiconductors or pharmaceuticals, as, we are talking about. I think it needs to be that thought leadership that India needs to provide to lead also towards the Viksit Bharat.
Yeah, I mean, an example of the world as sustainability. I think one of the biggest examples, and Dipali ji, you alluded to this question earlier. When we hear from policymakers, we hear from economists, there are two things that come in time and again when we're talking about our economy currently. Why is private industry not investing enough? Where is the capex? The second part is, are enough jobs being provided? Now, I think entrepreneurs in this country are some of the most resilient people because you have to go through so much to be successful and move on. That it takes real grit and determination. But the ask today is, please invest more, please provide more jobs, please provide higher paying jobs. What is the response to that ask? And I'll start with Dr. Khorakiwala on this.
It's a tough ask. One aspect basically is that as industry, at least I can talk about our industry, as industry, science and technology progresses and you move to a higher level of doing things with more science and newer technologies. And we are highly regulated industry in India and worldwide. One of the things I continuously observe, there are regulatory mechanisms and regulatory people who manage this hasn't changed in the last 30 years. So that itself creates a dissonance, what is needed to be done and how it is to be done. Many times the regulatory bodies are not aware of a new drug or innovation.
In India?
In India.
Okay.
How to be managed So we generally go by what happened in Western countries. If that is the same, okay. If something innovated in India, they have 100 questions to ask on the same subject. So that is a very massive structural gap we have in the country. And that needs to be corrected. Maybe this is true in other industry also, I am not aware. But this is one area which needs to be corrected. Second aspect is in terms of capabilities. From a regulatory perspective, it is available plenty in the country. Because of the kind of system and the rules and approaches they have, they are not able to access those competencies within the private sector which is available. So I think this is a very major handicap which will be there for innovation and new work done, because it takes awfully long time. I'll just give you one or two examples to illustrate. See, if I have to do for a new drug a phase 1 clinical trial, I go to Netherlands, I need ethics committee clearance. If I go to US or Europe, a 30-day period. And if I don't hear, I go ahead and do phase trial. Here it is 3 months, plus after 3 months they can raise questions, so it gets 6 months. Now in a new drug at every stage, there are so many stages of delay takes place, you eat away of your patent life and you become non-competitive. So many of us chose to get it done outside India, even though we have capability to do here.
No, so that's an important illustration of how things can, make business easier. Ease of doing business can be improved. But then let me come back to my core question on CAPEX. So my question is on CAPEX. The ask is for Indian industry to invest more and invest more domestically. Will we see that cycle?
Yeah, I think so. CAPEX, in fact, as far as the pharmaceutical and chemical industry is concerned, the need for CAPEX is limited. But when it comes to chemical part of it or biological, the need for CAPEX is high, because it's a fairly complex technology and facility. And I think people do invest significantly in CAPEX. But our industry, whatever may be reason, is not a kind of most industry where your capacity utilization is important. I think we work on keeping a fairly wide margin of capacity and the demand, so that you meet your demand every time.
Yes, your perspective.
No, I'll just say, so when we talk about CAPEX, I think the important aspect, and I don't know about the other industries, but I think the key thing would be about even investing in the indigenization of the supply chain. Because a lot of things when we talk about, and let's face it, when we talk about manufacturing, and the key ingredients still come in from China. There are a lot of things that, India still is dependent on a lot of other countries for the supply chain. And the important thing would be when you're talking about CAPEX, CAPEX will be very, should be done, whether it's for automation, technology, or also indigenizing the supply chain. For example, I'll just give you a small example. We set up a flooring plant in Telangana. Our 80% of our supply chain was dependent on China. Today, I would say that it's reverse, because we set up the entire ecosystem on the whole supply chain here, because it is one of the it's the first time that a flooring plant of this size was set up in India. So I think for all of us, when you talk about CAPEX, I think it is relatable. I mean, it is related to what you need in your field. But I think fundamentally, whether it's technology or whether it's anything, indigenizing the supply chain will be a very key thing. And for that, I think the investments will have to be done. The other thing is about manpower as well. So when you talk about that intelligent manpower, or whether that skilled manpower that the world is looking at, how are you investing in that would be also very key to what you do.
I think on the point of manpower, we have a huge opportunity here in the manufacturing sector, don't we, Mr. Rajesh?
Absolutely, and as what Dipali said, India as a country, if you look at the skillful talent available, there are more than 15 lakh engineers passing out every year in India. Now that is the talent pool that's available in the country, which can be used in-house, which can also be used for global servicing. Now when we talk about specifically coming back to your core question of CAPEX investment, see largely when people talk about CAPEX, we always talk about tangible assets. whether the factories are coming up, plant and machinery being invested or so on. If you look at semiconductor industry, if you take the top 5 players in semiconductor, 22% of their revenue is invested in R&D. That is capex. That is the intangible that is getting invested for the future growth. And that is where the electronics industry, where the EMS industry and the semiconductor industry is certainly investing a lot of money in capex through the intangible route, which also enhances the employability of the skillful talent that's available. So as I said earlier, 20% of the world's design workforce of semiconductor are Indians. So that is Indian talent and Indian investment going in there.
That's amazing. So if I were to ask you, and let me start with you, Rajesh, that when we're talking about building this path to Viksit Bharat and all of these components come in, we want more scale, we want to service the world, we want to create jobs internally. What are the 2 or 3 things that we need to do to move towards that from an industry perspective?
See, one is certainly the speed of delivery, which Dipali already talked about. The speed of delivery is very, very important. And the global logistics, the global supply chain has to coordinate with that very strongly so that the speed of delivery can be done. Innovation is another very, very important aspect because we can manufacture. The customer can give me any design, I can manufacture and supply. Unless we focus on ODM, and do our own designs and OEM related activities in India, that is what is to contribute to the global needs, create the need for those products around the world. Today we are only copying the products that the world need. But if I can start creating the products that I can make world need, that is where the shift of global manufacturing to India will be.
I mean, when we have the next DeepSeek or the next manufacturing innovation, I think we're pretty much there in a lot of spaces, aren't we, Dipali ji? We're moving ahead with innovation as well. Like you said, thought leadership is where we need to take it forward.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot more yet to be done, but I think the important aspect, and I'll take it from my industry and talk to you, like for us at Welspun, I think when I talk about thought leadership, this is what we look at. Whether it's the farmers who are the integral part of that entire supply chain, how are you looking at the traceability that comes in? When you have the MSMEs, because I'll tell you we work with more than 200 or 300 MSMEs in the whole ecosystem, how are they being supported in the, because they are the bedrock, whether it's in the credits or whether it's in the terms of technology upgradation. I think these are very critical part of what we need to really look at. And I think being the industry first in the terms of solution providing, I think could be a very key thing, what India can do. And I think that's what Welspun is maneuvering towards. And I think the important aspect of saying that being that thought leader, being that industry first, and it's not just an OM sitting out of India, it is a true manufacturing prowess who is industry's first or the world's first, and who can disrupt the world, as you gave an example of DeepSeek, is where it is a journey towards Viksit Bharat.
Amazing, amazing. Do we need to move towards being the cheapest in that case? That has always been the question, right? When we compare ourselves to large manufacturing hubs. And Dr. Khorakiwala, most efficient, cheapest. Is it time to change that rubric?
I think affordability is important. I'm not too sure being the cheapest. Because I think Indian drugs are very affordable worldwide. And in fact, 50% of Indian industry is export today. So we are no longer an India-based industry. It's a global industry, as I mentioned earlier also. But the challenge for the industry would be new science and new technologies absorption. Because that is changing quite dramatically the contour of the industry in the future. So one is moving towards 2 or 3 new sciences. One, I talked of biology as a new science. I think one would see more and more personalized medicine coming into as a new science with genomics and all these processes helped by the speed with which the IT and AI is accelerating the change and the progress.
How much of AI are you using right now?
In research, we are not using too much of AI at the moment, but other part of organization, one is using to some extent. And therefore, one has to see to what extent AI will help, but it accelerates the process. The real innovation, still you require people, because I don't think people have yet to replicate the uniqueness of our own mind and intelligence.
No, they're definitely not
So a
anytime soon.
repetitive aspect, yes, AI can help you a lot extent, and a lower level of intelligence, not the very high level of intelligence you require for drug. The other area is the whole new science emerging in the stem cell area, stem cell research. And I think newer medicine will come out of that knowledge. Already a few drugs have started coming in. They're extremely expensive, but that is how the new science would move. Mainly because both genomic and stem cell acts very differently than the earlier existing treatment, because they can bind to a specific cell and treat a disease. So obviously this will all add up to a few more years we will live over the years.
So longevity. If India can be at the forefront of the longevity movement, then we've cracked that code.
That is right.
Yeah, amazing. Dipali, on the use of AI, and because I'm just wondering, that's going to be the one parameter we need to compete, right? Or do we? We have a large population.
Yeah. I think AI is a very important aspect, and there are these conversations about they're going to disrupt, the entire space in the terms of people and jobs. But I think as, Mr. Khorakiwala, Dr. Khorakiwala just pointed out, I think AI actually will facilitate a lot of things. I'll give you a small example, and it is, we've been talking about technology, but I'll give you a small example in manufacturing. I have towel counting, and we do millions of towels every day. So, that towel counting leads to human fatigue. So we have AI installed there. So as a result, the human fatigue is not there, and my, index of right first time is over 98%. Wow. So, these are the things that actually help you to facilitate a lot of things. The ability to predict, the ability to see. I'll give you a small example what we leverage in India. Just quick, fast one. In India, in one of the catchment areas, suppose my ticket size of buying a towel or a sheet was around $2,000. We, after a lot of analytics, found out that no, the ticket size could go up to around $4,000 as well. So these are the things that can enable to actually speed up business or an opportunity. So everything will have to coexist together. I think the fear of letting go people, or fear of, but I think it's going to add on huge opportunities, what we can see.
Definitely. And in your sector, I suppose, more than ever, you will have to inculcate artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So certainly, yes, Tamanasi, I look at it two ways. The AI being used in the manufacturing technology itself, but AI also being used in the product offering to the customer, because both are as critical. Now, if I talk of both the aspects, now when we look at these very large factories in China, Taiwan, etc., you have a single shop floor of 200,000 square feet, maybe 50 lines of SMT operating, being supervised by 1 or 2 engineers maximum. Oh. These are called dark factories or light out factories. They just stand in a corner and see what's operating. AI controls the manufacturer. They see whichever machine stops, they just go and address that machine. So that is the importance of AI in the manufacturing side. Now, when you look at AI on the product offering itself that's being made, a couple of spaces where Keynes has entered into. One is the smart metering solution. Right now, we're talking about smart energy meters on the electricity side, where it supports the government to ensure that there are no leakages, the revenues are recovered well in time, but also at the same time the opportunity that gives for the manufacturing side, not just for India but around the world. Second thing is we have seen about the safety requirement in the railways. So we have acquired a company based out of Europe, which is AI-based sensor technology is used for the railway safeties.
Okay.
So that certainly minimizes the incidence of accidents that can happen, the property leakages that can happen on the railways network that is in the place. Yeah. So AI is certainly very, very critical.
AI is definitely going to be included. As we wrap up this conversation, let's start with closing comments. And I'll come to you, Mr. Rajesh, on the thoughts of India as a manufacturing hub, manufacturing as the key push for Viksit Bharat. Is this a distant dream or a reality waiting to happen?
So I would make three statements for this. For me, it's very clear on India being a manufacturing hub. So the three statements are, one is, it's not why India, it's why not India. Second is, if India can become the manufacturing superpower, it's not if, it will how fast it can. And third is certainly India is not an alternative to China or manufacturing. It is going to be the global manufacturing leader.
That's amazing. A round of applause for that amazing statement. But Dr. Khorakiwala, your take.
I believe India is already a very important player in the world. And this is all driven by manufacturing. And one of the uniqueness of our industry is it is not a mass-produced activity because you have so many drugs for so many disease treatment. And that gives us a very unique advantage vis-a-vis China or any large Western countries. We are not in a mass production like many items. We are on a small product, and therefore our ability and agility to deal with the complexity of changing and other things is not only it is driven by new technology of AI and other things where you can reduce your cost and operation, but our ability to supply a large number of products and that advantage is a very significant advantage India has, and this is the one we should continue to capture, innovate in our technology and this flexibility which it offers, and we are very good at that.
Excellent. Yes, ma'am. As we close, do you agree with that statement? It's a matter of not why India, but why not?
And I totally agree and endorse to that. Let me just give you one thing. I remember the time when we set up the first terry towel plant in India in 1993. They didn't believe that there could be a beautiful towel be made in India. To being the fifth towel in America today, every fifth towel made used in America is made by Wellspun. I can tell you there'll be 100 more companies that will be here who will be making world-class products, whether it is going to be in the terms of textiles, apparel, fashion, and also being on that table to contribute towards, the thought leadership is what I can say. So I can definitely say India's era has begun, and it is that journey towards that Viksit Bharat we will see.
Wow, excellent. Thank you so much to all of you.